Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is the president of the Métis National Council, Victoria Pruden. Pruden previously held leadership roles with the Métis Nation of British Columbia before joining the MNC in April 2024 as Senior Director of Strategic Policy. She became CEO in October 2024 and selected as president that December. Pruden takes the helm of the MNC during a tumultuous time that has seen Métis Nation-Saskatchewan, the Manitoba Métis Federation, and Métis Nation of British Columbia all withdrawing from the 40-year-old organization in recent years. And a note, this episode was recorded just prior to the release of the Métis National Council's expert panel's review of communities in Ontario. President Pruden, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, Dennis.
No shortage of things to talk about here, but I guess let's start with the election. What are some of the priorities for the Métis National Council in this election?
Great question. We have a number of priorities coming up in this election, of course, and those priorities are also being influenced by, of course, the presence of tariffs coming out of the U.S. and how that will impact our economy and affordability in Canada. So some of the top priorities that we have in terms of the Métis National Council and our governing members involve affordability. How are we going to be ensuring that our people, especially our most vulnerable, are able to maintain the lives that they need to live in wellness and prosperity in Canada? So affordability. We know from statistical data that Métis individuals and Métis families have already been feeling an affordability crunch post-COVID. The cost of housing, food insecurity, the ongoing impact of rising costs of food, utilities. So, of course, affordability is a number one issue. Related to that, how is the federal government going to ensure Métis inclusion in any approaches, programs, and policy regarding economic development and economic reconciliation? For example, the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program. It's going to be paramount that whichever party forms the next government, we ensure that there's a distinctions-based approach to that program and others, ensuring that not only First Nations and Inuit can take advantage of the program, but Métis governments and Métis businesses can as well. Other top priorities for us include ensuring momentum forward in terms of supporting Métis governments with their self-government agreements and ongoing treaty negotiations, ensuring that we don't lose the progress that's been gained over the last 10 years. Another priority that I had the chance to speak to the current Prime Minister about is ensuring that the Indigenous Children First Bill, Bill C-92, doesn't lose traction and that we see more progress in terms of investments and commitments moving forward to ensure that Métis children and families are considered. These aren't abstract ideas to us. These policies and related programming and investments we need change now. We need action now. Children, youth, and families need to be healthy to contribute to our ongoing position in the country. We need healthy families to be able to work and contribute to the Canadian economy and achieve wellness for all of us. So.
Lots there, and we'll unpack some of those in a few minutes, I guess. But, sure. As we head into week 2 here, Indigenous issues have been largely missing. I think that's safe to say from this campaign. I've only heard the word Métis once, and it was when Liberal leader Mark Carney mistakenly said he met with Métis in Nunavut. Are you concerned about the lack of attention to Métis issues in this campaign?
Absolutely, we are. It's very much clear to us that any Indigenous priorities need to be distinction-based. We need to have those Métis priorities articulated alongside Inuit and First Nations priorities. Métis people are extremely important, and we need to be prioritized equally in whatever platforms are coming forward from the federal parties. And it is of concern that we're not hearing distinctions-based priorities in that way.
One of the only times that the word Indigenous even comes up is when we're talking about energy resource projects, pipelines, things of that sort. The energy corridor being a big one of those. Would the MNC be, supportive of some of these projects, like an energy corridor?
I think, like in that case, we know that Métis governments themselves, of course, have their own issues, priorities, and projects that they may want to participate in or are already participating in. And really, our role is to support the autonomy and the integrity of Métis governments, taking those steps and taking those positions and participating in those projects as directed by their citizens and to benefit their citizens. So we're certainly not opposed, but again, our role is to support the autonomy of Métis governments for the benefit of their citizens. So,
just was going through some of the MNC financials yesterday, and I think you could say that the Trudeau era was a pretty good time for Métis when it comes to funding and programming. How would you describe the last decade or so?
I think definitely there was a lot of benefit that was gained for Métis governments and the Métis Nation overall. I think we saw participation, commitment, and recognition like we'd never seen before. And, I think it's really important that we try to advocate as hard as we can not to lose momentum. That being said, I think that we know going into this election, and no matter who assumes power, it may be an opportunity where we have to be more fiscally conservative, but certainly what we're hoping for is to build on the momentum in support of Métis governments and their citizens. And it's our role to continue to advocate in a really strong and positive way for that ongoing commitment.
It kind of seems like Indigenous issues since the beginning of 2025 have kind of been pushed to the wayside in some ways. Do you have any concerns about everything that's been built up over the last decade, including some of that funding coming to a halt following this election?
I've been reflecting about this, of course, a lot. I've worked in and around the Métis Nation for a long time, and I've been reflecting back about what it was like during Stephen Harper's term, for example. And of course, we do have concerns, and I think that we need to just continue to ensure that no matter what happens, we're keeping that Métis voice articulated and that we're able to bring a national lens and a national scope to whatever decisions, policy, programming, funding that the federal government makes in that Indigenous landscape, and keep advocating for distinctions-based investments into Métis Nation, Métis governments, and of course, programs and services that benefit Métis citizens on a day-to-day basis. And also advocating, if there's, I'll use the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program as an example again, we need to ensure that those opportunities are there for Métis governments and Métis businesses on a distinctions-based basis. So,
I guess, has MNC been preparing for the worst?
I would say that I've been in this position for 4 months, and it's really a big priority for me, certainly, and for the leaders that I work alongside, to be preparing for a period of fiscal restraint. I think it's really important for us to be conservative, to be prudent and fiscally responsible in terms of planning for the future in every decision that we make, knowing that we've got a really important responsibility to the people to continue being a voice of advocacy and a convener, and ensuring that we're taking every opportunity we can to articulate Métis-specific needs and priorities. So, yes, definitely taking a look at being as kind of sharpening our pencils and tightening our belts and ensuring that we can continue to do good work in support of the people and in support of Métis governments.
President Pruden, a whole lot more to get to here. We just need to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. with Victoria Pruden, the president of the Métis National Council. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Victoria Pruden, the president of the Métis National Council. President Pruden, we mentioned in the intro, this is a tumultuous time for the Métis National Council, and not just for economic reasons, but only the Métis Nation of Ontario, Métis Nation Alberta remain in the 40-plus-year-old organization. What's your take on how we got here?
Well, I think that there's a whole lot of dynamics that led us to this point, and I'm not going to unpack all of them at this moment, but in the past, reflecting about the Métis National Council, certainly we've had members leave and return, but to face this situation where we had the departure of, Saskatchewan and British Columbia in the fall, leaving Otipemisiwak Métis Government, Métis Nation Alberta, and Métis Nation Ontario left as members. That's a situation that we'd never faced before. However, those two governing members still felt that it was really important to collaborate and to hold a space for a national perspective on Métis issues. And that's what we stay focused on. We're holding that space. We'll see what happens in the coming months and year, whether our membership will change. It's a big mandate for me to look at a modernization and a revising and a revisioning about the Métis National Council and its mandate, but one thing hasn't changed. It's really important for us to maintain a national perspective. We just talked about those statistics where 44% of Métis individuals and families are having trouble making ends meet. It's important for us to be holding that national perspective and those national priorities and communicating them out to decision makers, to governments, to leaders. And that's what we're going to continue to focus on. I mean, certainly we've got a lot of work to do, and we're committed to doing it right now with the support of Otipemisiwak and Métis Nation Ontario. So.
The rhetoric in recent years has gotten very heated, with the Chiefs of Ontario saying they don't believe the Métis Nation of Ontario is legitimate. The MMF, of course, leaving MNC in 2021 over concerns with the MNO's registry. Why do you think it is important to stand beside MNO?
Well, right now, especially at the time that I came into the MNC and let my name stand in December, as you'll recall, the Métis National Council Assembly voted in 2021 for an expert panel examination around the concerns facing Métis Nation Ontario. And Dennis, I would certainly say stay tuned, because I do believe we're going to be seeing some release of information and release of some of those reports out. And there's certainly issues that we respect our Métis governments in dealing with and reporting out on. And so, I would just say stay tuned, because there's more to come specifically on that issue, and those are really important discussions that have to be had, and we support the Métis governments in dealing with them with transparency.
We'll stay tuned. Looking forward to them. They've been promised for quite some time. What do you think's the holdup on getting that information out?
Actually, Dennis, we really didn't receive the final version of the reporting from the expert panel until mid-December. The intention had been for that report to be released in October of 2024. Unfortunately, the final version wasn't released until December. Then we hit Christmas and then the new year, but we'll be seeing some release of information very soon.
There are those, of course, who question the legitimacy of the Métis National Council right now, with only one of the founding members still involved. What do you say to those people?
Well, right now, I think what I would say to those people is we found and are supported by those two Métis governments who still want to collaborate. They still want to work together. And the organization had a number of commitments, not the least of which was to produce that expert panel report. And other, organizational mandates that we had, agreements to fulfill. We believe that holding the space is important, and continuing to fulfill our commitments as an organization is important and needs to be a priority. And holding that national space, not being willing to give up that space just yet. And, every Métis government is entitled to make its decisions and have its positions in what they estimate is the best interests of their citizens, and we respect that. At the same time, the Métis National Council respects the decision of the Otipemisiwak Métis Government in Alberta and the Métis Nation of Ontario to continue to work together, to continue to produce research, reporting, policy, and advocacy and convening in a national way that brings people together. And that's what we're continuing to do. I understand people's concerns, of course. We're in a position that we've never been in before in many ways across the Métis Nation. We have self-government agreements for the first time. We have historical treaties being negotiated and one being signed, of course, by the Manitoba Métis Federation in 2024. This is a point in time we've never been at before. And the Métis Nation of Alberta, Otipemisiwak Métis Government, and Métis Nation of Ontario wanted to continue to work together to support the Métis National Council going forward, and we'll see what happens. As in the past, we've had members leave. Métis Nation Saskatchewan had left in the past and come back. Métis Nation British Columbia had left and come back. We'll see what the coming months and year holds for us, Dennis. And we'll just continue to do good work in support of all of our people in the meantime.
With all that in mind and 5 years of turmoil, why did you want to put your name forward to lead?
That's an interesting way to phrase it, Dennis. Why did I want to put my name forward to lead? I came to work with the Métis National Council last year in 2024 after having been a community president, grassroots, for many years in British Columbia, where I still currently live. I served as a senior director at Métis Nation British Columbia. I served on their Métis Provincial Council as an elected women's representative for a term, and had the opportunity to do national scope work in support of Métis women as well. Coming into the organization with decades of experience working in support of our people, it's always been a priority of mine to do good work in support of particularly our most vulnerable. That's why I got into representation at the local and the provincial level to begin with. When I took a look at what was happening when former President Cassidy Caron made the decision that she was not going to run again and she was starting her family, I knew the gravity of the situation and the many challenges facing the Métis National Council. And having kind of grown up around Métis politics and watching and participating in the Métis National Council in previous roles in previous years, I felt a real calling to step into a difficult leadership position to help see a number of things through and help the organization to stay standing and hold in that space. I talked to my elders a lot. I talked to my family, of course, a lot, and I prayed about it a lot. It was not a decision that I took lightly, and not so much wanting to run, but letting my name stand for a leadership position in a very challenging and difficult time. And, when you think about the way that we chose our leaders in the past, sometimes in the days of the buffalo hunt, you would choose a particular leader for a particular task for a particular time. And I think that's what I see this role as, someone to help assist the Métis National Council in revisioning, repositioning, and rearticulating what its role will be. Of course, taking the lead of Métis governments in that process. So, with the support of my elders and past leaders in the Métis Nation, I made the decision to let my name stand, and here we are 4 months later. So,
President Pruden, a whole lot more going to try and sneak in here, but I got to step aside for one more quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Victoria Pruden, the president of the Métis National Council. President Pruden, before the break, we were talking about how you came to be leader, and I was thinking about this last night. When President Caron was wrapping up her term, she kind of spoke out about some of the gender politics involved. You can't help but notice that the three leaders with MNC are all women and the others are all men. Does gender, have you faced any of this gender politics?
Well, working in and around our nation for a long time, and I'm in my mid-50s. I've definitely noticed and experienced over the years issues related to women in leadership and gender. I wouldn't say that it's a boys versus girls or a men versus women situation, but the situation that we're in right now it's true. I'm a woman. President Andrea Sandmeyer is a woman. President Margaret Froh is a woman. And it's an interesting time. And I do think that both men and women bring different perspectives to leadership. I do think it's an interesting opportunity for women in leadership to extend, the gifts that we have as matriarchs leading. It's an honor to work alongside these leaders. And, if there are issues under the surface that have to do with gender and approach, it's my hope that we can find ways to be able to come back together, that we can find ways to model really good, positive leadership regardless of gender, for our next generation of leaders, for Métis youth, for Métis children, and for Métis people who have aspirations to lead in our communities and across Métis governments. Interesting question. Thank you for commenting on that.
Lastly here, I guess, because we're already over time, President Pruden, we talked about the self-government agreements a little bit, the modern day treaties. Mm-hmm. Those really stalled out near the end of the Trudeau era, I guess I'll call it. Do you see those picking back up no matter who's in power here in a month?
We're certainly advocating for that. It's absolutely imperative that we don't lose momentum on those. There's been a lot of work, a lot of investment of taxpayers' dollars moving these forward. Let's keep that momentum going and let's keep moving forward. The statistics that we talked about earlier in the interview, Métis families, Métis people are feeling the crunch of affordability, and we need to be able to move those forward so that Métis governments are in the position to help all of our people, from the most vulnerable to the successful owners and business people and professionals in our communities. We need to move forward together for the benefit of everyone. And so we're going to continue to send that message that moving forward and getting that momentum going again on those self-government agreements and on the implementation and negotiation of treaties is of paramount importance. The time is now, and let's not waste all of that work and all that investment. Let's bring it across the finish line for the benefit of our people.
President Pruden, a whole lot we didn't get to. Never a boring moment in Métis politics, but appreciate you taking some time for us this week.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Marcy. It's been great talking to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Marcy, that is all the time we have and more. You can catch up on any episodes you may have missed on our website, aptnnews.ca, and the extended version of this interview will be on our APTN News YouTube page, as well as the podcast, which you can download wherever you find your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. We will see you back here in 7 days.